Hey guys, good morning. I just wanted to let you know right away, if you don't watch this full video, you will be fired. And actually, if you aren't taking notes within like the first few minutes, yeah, you're just like stupid. Like, I can't believe that any of you guys will amount to anything. Good luck. It's a tough world out there. So if you can't follow along with what we're doing now, I really don't expect you to be able to do anything in this world. There's a lot of rules that you gotta learn, so you better pay attention. And actually, the last mentor that we had, she took great notes through this whole video, and she was actually really engaging, and she called during when I was recording, just so I could have a conference call with her as an example. So I was expecting you guys to be a little bit more like that. I hope all of you can practice just read a textbook or something. I know Carly's been doing that. Yeah, could you guys be a little bit more like that? Cool. Thanks. So I actually need a minute to shake that off because that felt so bad. That's an example of what not to do. And just kidding. Nobody's going to be fired, and you guys are all perfect exactly the way you are, and nobody's better than the other person. Ooh, that was nasty. So, I had a real callback to my childhood to really feel those instances, like the last time I really felt like somebody spoke to me that way. But they are prevalent so often in our life today. And so we sometimes when we're trying to get people to do something, we don't always speak in the most encouraging ways. We can blame people, and we threaten them, we warn them, we compare them to other people, we can be sarcastic, and we do this prophecy, oh, if you don't do that, or if you're acting that way, how do you expect to be anywhere in your life? And unfortunately, I know that I've been a victim of that. My favorite one is, well, not my favorite, but when I was reading all the ways of not to communicate, I was like, oh, I've definitely done that. And the worst thing is that I thought, I was yeah, I'm doing a great job. Lecturing and immoralizing. So that would be Johnny, do you really want to take that from Sally? Think about it. We should really be treating others the way that we want to be treated. And by taking that from her, that's showing, honestly, I'm already bored listening to myself. But I know myself to go on these long rambles of a lecture and explaining. Clearly, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I like to talk. But when we're trying to get somebody to behave a certain way, and we're just lecturing and immoralizing, it doesn't create a good response. Sorry to everybody out there who I've ever done that for. I had the best intentions. I was really just trying to share and give a nice piece of information. And again, that's all of our intentions are good, right? When we're prophesizing, oh, well, if you walk around snatching things out of people's hands, you won't have any friends. Well, of course, we know it's not even that we don't want our friends snatching things from other people, but we do know, that is an example of 2 + 2 = 4. If you do that, group census is you're not going to have a lot of friends because that's just mean and nobody's going to want to be around you. But when we like prophesize like that and say that to somebody, it just leaves like really icky feelings for them. And then when we're aware, for us as well. So chapter 2 is all about engaging in cooperation in a way that, and I'm actually just going to read you this amazing quote from the end of the book. Well, not from the end of the book, from the end of chapter 2. So it says that we want to put an end to talk that wounds the spirit and search out language that nourishes self-esteem. We want to create an emotional climate that encourages participants, friends, children to cooperate because they care about themselves and because they care about us. Our purpose is to speak what is best in our participants, children's, peers, which is their intelligence, their initiative, their sense of responsibility, their sense of humor, and their ability to be sensitive to the needs of others. Whew. I love that. Yeah, it's like in chapter 1, again, it's trusting that those who we surround ourselves, it's speaking to the best in them. And it's trusting that they will do what's right. We have to give them the opportunity and set them up for success. And sometimes in us trying to do so, we end up wounding their spirit, which just like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward. Like, it's hard to continue on being your best self when you have a lot of wounds and when you're feeling a little crippled. Last week we did our acronym of 4: lag, listen, acknowledge that you're listening, give it a name, and grant the wishes in fantasy, not therapy. Do not try to be their therapist. Although in a way you kind of are, because the best thing that therapists can do is just sit back and listen. So that's actually a good example. So Freudian slip. Okay, so the 5 skills that chapter 2 gives us is, so think about a situation, right? We're trying to get Daniel, we'll go back to our friend Daniel. We're trying to get him to, one of his jobs today is to help with lunch. So he's not really wanting to participate. He's coming up and really feels like he has a lot to share, and you want to hold that space for him to listen because that's important. That's chapter 1, is listening. But right now you have a little bit of a time, there's a sense of time urgency, and there's a limited window where you need to get the table set before lunch because that is your on the whiteboard for lunch prep that day. And he's just kind of dragging his feet, not wanting to get off the swing. When you do ask, he kind of has like a reason that's like just confusing enough so you don't actually understand his reason for not wanting to do it, but like you're just like at this point so confused at what's going on, you don't even know how to respond. So one of the first strategies of engaging somebody's participation is describing what's happening, describing the problem. So that would look like, again, we need the table set. Daniel, the table's not set. Daniel, it's almost lunchtime and I don't see any plates on the table. There you go. Daniel, everybody's coming for lunch and they're really hungry and they don't have anywhere to sit because there's no silverware out. So describing the problem, right? We can assess what's going on what needs to be done and what the problem is, and just describe that. It doesn't. What I really love is the book totally talks about making sure that your tone matches the severity of what you're dealing with. If we sometimes like sugarcoat what we are trying to say with our words or also our actions, it totally loses its potency, right? So like if you are pretty upset, if it's been a while, if it's been like 10 minutes that you've been trying to get Daniel to come do this and just been like sent on the roundabout journey of his procrastination, you can be upset. And as long as through describing the problem, it's not accusatory. It's not saying you need to set the table and you didn't do that. It's simply stating the fact, therefore giving the opportunity for the participant to assess the situation on their own. So again, it's stating the problem and trusting that they want to fix the problem, and they know it's a task that requires their help. So a precautionary for using this describing the problem would be describing a problem that doesn't necessarily mandate their cooperation. So that would be like, Daniel, you left the door open when you're standing like right next to the door and he just walked in. Like, that's kind of like, well, you close it. And we might even get that response like, okay, cool, you can close it. We stated the problem, but that it wasn't this like easy invite. It wasn't something that they needed to do. Okay, so describe the problem. This is my favorite one. So the second one is giving information. Okay, so this is my favorite one because I feel like I listened to this podcast once, and it was this amazing lady who, she was like some actress and performer and like performed like burlesque and was just this like totally rad chick. And she was talking about how she wishes that in school or like when you are giving your birth certificate, you're also as a parent given like the list of things that everybody assumes is common knowledge, but isn't at all. So then you like walk through life and you like find out these little like pockets of information and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I not know that earlier? Or you walk through life and you're given these pockets of circumstances and you're like, wow, this seems like so like rudimentary. Like I feel like I should have known how to do that, but I don't because I was never taught. So in the skill set number 2 of giving information, it's such a beautiful way to not sound like we're constantly nagging and telling somebody not to do something, of like, stop punching that, stop coloring that, stop. Instead it's saying, it's giving an alternative and explaining why. So an example would be, we see a participant coloring on the table. Tables aren't for coloring, paper is for coloring. Chairs aren't for throwing, they're for sitting. That's a little extreme. But what I really liked about going back to when I was listening to my podcast was just, there are these things that we assume are common knowledge, but they aren't. And I think most importantly in our demographic of where we're working at La Ikea is not assuming that anything is common knowledge, and giving first the opportunity through granting information of like, can you really be wrong? Can you really get mad at somebody if they didn't know what they were doing is wrong? No. But if we give them the information and say, hey, that is not for that. Scissors are not for throwing, they're for cutting. Glasses are not for smashing, they're for drinking. I'm sure I hope you guys are sitting on the other end of this call, like coming up with some examples through just working with your participants. But I think it's easy for us when situations can get a little heightened to want to just be like, no, 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 and like freak out. But really trying to use that skill first. And again, going back to number one of like, it's okay to have your tone and your attitude match the level of intensity that the situation is speaking to. So if it is something like somebody has a chair over their head and looks like they want to like smash it through the wall, just being able to say, hey, chairs are not for smashing, they're for sitting, and give it a second. And that's where like all of us are smart and capable and wise and intuitive and all those things, and just like members of society. So we know we'll be able to speak to if that's immediately like diffusing the situation. But yeah, give information is number two. Number three, say it with a word. Again, I feel like they're kind of all my favorite, but I love this probably because this one speaks to me and when I want to go on these long tangents. And I can feel myself, honestly, when I'm speaking to a participant and I'm getting in my lecturing, like I'm like 3/4 of the way in and I'm like, girl, like I honestly stopped listening to myself, like, and I know that they probably stopped listening, and but at that point I'm already committed, so I'm just gonna keep finishing up. So number three is to say it with a word. So instead of like, Daniel, you know, think about all the people at lunch who are going to show up and they're not going to have anything to eat off of, and they're going to be really hungry, and they're going to show up expecting to have the table set, and think about what you would want to do, you know, like if you were hungry and you showed up for lunch and the table wasn't set, like you'd be really disappointed, right? And I've already lost myself. So instead we can say, Daniel, lunch. Daniel, table. Daniel, picnic tables. And just saying it with a clear, precise word. Now, obviously, this works only if the participant already knows the task at hand. But instead of that constant like nagging and getting them to do that, okay, Daniel, ducks. Daniel, chickens. And it just like, again, we're speaking to the best in our friends. So we know that they already know what to do. And this is with everybody, right? Like imagine, and this is why this mentor training it's to how to talk with everybody, right? We see another mentor, and gosh, guys, like part of the reason that I love doing this is because I don't have something over my masks. And I hate being bad cop, but like I get it, right? And like I'm number one rebel and defiant, and to talk about zodiac, like I'm literally the zodiac person for defiance and rebellion. So let me tell you, like wearing this, I just want to take it off and be rebellious. But that's like not cool. That's not our rules. We all have to do things in our life that we don't like to do, and right now wearing a mask is one of them. So imagine like, you know, you're working and you see another mentor not have a mask, and like, right, like that just instantly you feel uncomfortable because you don't want to be the one that says that, and you know it's frustrating because you know that they're supposed to wear the mask. So instead of doing any of the other options, just say mask. Hey, Jolene, mask. Like one word sums it up, short, sweet. They know that what they need to do with that word. Simple, precise, awesome. Oh, okay, here I am. This one's also my favorite. Alara, shout out to you because the meeting last week that got cut, and you guys, unless you were present for it, it wasn't recorded, so you guys didn't hear it. But I love the fourth one of talking about your feelings, because I had called on Alara to give an example of what not to do, or like what her gut response was to a situation. And her beautiful gut response and natural reaction was to share that what the participant was doing wasn't making her feel good, which is, I love, because in sharing that, hey, like what you're doing is making me uncomfortable, we are trusting that with that knowledge of how we feel, whoever we're speaking with will take that and say, oh, like, I don't want to make you feel bad. I'm sorry. I didn't know that, like, I was causing a negative reaction in you, so I'll change and respond a different way. I think this can be a little bit easier when, again, it's like a really relaxed setting, and it's more like talking and communicating versus like a heightened situation. But even then, like we see somebody having an outrage, or we see somebody getting really frustrated, and just sharing like, hey, like, John, you're making me really uncomfortable. It would make me feel better if you like talked about your feelings with me instead of started punching the wall. And I feel really, I don't like being told what to do. I would feel better if you asked me. And just really slipping into our everyday talk of offering up how we do feel. And this is something that is really powerful in context with the rest of our life. And it's fun because it kind of takes ownership for the one sharing how they feel, because it gets us into our feelings. It allows us to be vulnerable, and it puts the trust in the other person. And vulnerability and trust, our Brene Brown fans out there, woo-hoo, they go hand in hand. So trust, right? It's one of those like key ingredients we all know of healthy relationships. And as a community, that's the most important thing that we want, is trust. So when we are vulnerable about the way that we feel, the way that we say like, hey, this is making me upset. Well, why is that so vulnerable? Because the other person has the full willpower to be like, so what? I don't care how you feel. And that actually is something that came up in some of the questions from parents who have read this book. And when I was reading about that, I was thinking of a particular participant who I could totally see being like, I don't care. And even that's an example to explain, like, or why should I care how you feel? And we can say like, well, because like or who cares that you feel that way? And we can say, well, I care that I feel this way, and I care about myself, and I also care about the way you feel. And it means a lot to me that we care about each other. And that is what this village is about, is creating a family who cares about each other. So just, again, it's like understanding. I know I talked about the practice, like some of these, man, like it has just like learning anything, when you're learning something, it's all new, so it all seems really potent, and it might be a little tricky to like actually like put into practice, but immediately you see responses. But then I feel like there's a plateau period where you kind of like are figuring some things out, you're ironing some things out, what's worked before and you're doing it again isn't working, and then you get a little discouraged. But I challenge you guys to push past that. And right now we're still in the early stages, so like use these tools. You're gonna get immediate responses. right away. And I'm so stoked to hear your stories of how like you did see instant change. But also, like, when you do get those like little like zingers of like, you say, hey, like, that makes me feel uncomfortable, and who cares? Like, bring those stories to the table, and that's where the second half of these meetings is going to be you sharing that, so we can talk about that. And just like trusting and, you know, using your intuition and guidance, and using the tools that we've learned of just explaining. And always, the reason that we talk about the way we feel is because the other solution or the other alternative would be like blaming them. All right, that just puts somebody in the defensive and backs them in the corner. When somebody's in the defensive, they're not learning. What does defense means? That means you feel like you're being attacked, and that's not trust, right? Like, if I feel like I'm being attacked, you sound like an enemy and you're here to hurt me or do something, and it puts us in that very primal state. We're so much more primitive than we give ourselves credit for, and especially when we are out of that frontal cortex of thinking and decision making, which a lot of our participants can easily be ruled by their emotions. We slip back into like our very primal ways of being, and think about it as like a raw human back in the day when we were these jungle creatures, and who we are as primates. We're constantly getting attacked, and we constantly have to be on the defensive. So having that in mind when we're communicating, of really like always letting know, like, hey, like, I'm your friend, man, like, safety, like, this is a safe space, and I'm gonna do that by showing you that I'm vulnerable, by laying down on my belly up, and I'm gonna show my soft side, and I'm gonna show that like I'm comfortable and I trust you. So what is there to be scared of? And I hope that you feel safe enough to trust me as well. So number 4, talk about your feelings. And number 5 is really cool too, because I love how creative we all can get. Number 5 is where I think that we can really express our creativity, because number 5 is writing a note. So I imagined, one of our participants, I was trying to think of another way that I could say her name. We're just gonna call her AC. Those are her initials. And AC doesn't like to like meditate or do yoga. And like, that's cool, autonomy. Like, I don't want to force you to do anything you don't want to. But like, also sometimes we just know like certain things, it's just like we just want them to try it, because once they try it, we're like, it's gonna be juicy, it's gonna be great, and I think you'll really like it. And like, please try, and then tell me you don't want to do this. And like, I don't always want to do it either, but when I do it, like, that's the whole point of yoga is like, nobody, well, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but like, sometimes we're all like, I don't want to go, and then we go and we're like, I feel so much better, I wish somebody would have like been at me. And some of us do have that accountability, that friend that's like, yo, I know you're sleepy and I know you're hungover, but like, you need to get your butt in yoga and you'll feel better. And like, that's the kind of mentor that I want to be, where I am able to be like, listen, like, I'm going to be your higher self right now. And I know that you actually want to do this, but you're just having a little meh moment. So a fun way to like get in there without having to put on your bad cop uniform is to write a note. So why this I think can be really fun is some of the examples given are like, my favorite one, a mom of like a parent of two-year-olds. They were playing and they had this habit of not cleaning up their toys after they were finished playing. So she threw a paper airplane into them and said, it rhymes, so I'm trying to think of exactly what it said. Like, oh boy, like, after play, please put your toys away. That sounds right. Toys away after play. Love, and she drew like a little picture of herself. And what I love about that example is the 2-year-olds didn't know what the note said, but because their mom got their attention with like a paper airplane, like that's so cool. They like came running in and they saw that there were words on the paper. This must be important, like an airplane delivery. So they ran in and they asked their mom, like, what does this say? And the mom explained it. And the kids were like, awesome, cool, and had no problems putting their toys away after playing. I really love that the Melly House already does this. How many of you have been over there and you're like washing your hands and you see like the little note that's like listed at like washing my hands, and then there's like a towel note, and I think there might even be like a toilet paper note. And these are things that we can totally do around like Latkea, right? Like anything that we ever see that like is frustrating that we know that our friends do and other people do, right? Like that's living in community. Is I might know to only take like 4 sheets of toilet paper max, but I get really annoyed when I like see that somebody's just like use that wad of toilet paper, and I'm like, and just like leaving a little note. And that's where we can like make it funny and do a little rhyme and have fun with it, so it's not like that constant nagging. Like I think about a note as like a way to get the message across, but I also want to leave the person smiling because of like our cute fun way to add a little rhyme into it. The reason I brought up AC was because I know that she has a tendency to really want to be on her phone and watch her videos and listen to her music, which is awesome, dude. Like, if somebody constantly nagged me to get off my phone when like, sometimes what I'm doing is important, or sometimes what I'm doing isn't important, and that's why it's important, because I'm just like, okay, I'm chilling and I'm gonna scroll through Pinterest, and this is my, like, relaxed time. But just slip a note and say like, hey, okay, well, I'm drawing the blank on their creativity, but like put a little note in front of on her screen that's whatever you want to convey. I just love the idea of leaving little cute things, maybe in the mirror, right? Like we could get those window, those glass things, and especially now with Corona, right? So writing a little note like sing your song to help the day go along. That doesn't make any sense. Just to let you guys know, I haven't had my coffee yet, and that does encourage the creative part of my brain. It's definitely like the synapses fire with caffeine triggered. But that's going to be your homework, is to start thinking about like these little fun ways to do that. And the cool thing about Note is you don't have to come up with something on the fly. I know one of the examples talks about like a mom who works from home and her kids are always playing in the other room. And one of the big frustrations she has is, obviously, as you can imagine, the kids playing, mom's trying to work, is she gets really frustrated with them making a lot of noise. So she had like a little pad of paper and a pen next to her at all times, and she would just write down. And also the thing about notes is like, if you're, same thing, like always keep your tone. If you're upset, put that in the message, right? Sometimes it's easier to convey or to help. It's kind of like knowing your own self-control. Like if you know that you're not going to be able to keep your shit together when you're explaining something to somebody because you're really angry, write a note. And then you can have that extra step. It's kind of like when people tell you nowadays, like you can write a text message so you don't like scream and you can actually be articulate. Write that note down and send it that way. And this is where we can use some of the examples from our other skill set. Describe what happened. I'm furious because I left because I went to go get my boots and they were left out in the rain, and now I have soggy boots. Perfect example. I am going to read for you guys just some, I know we're about 34 minutes in, but to wrap up, I'm going to read some examples because some of them are just too good not to share, out of describing or how to use each skill, like some of the examples the book gives. And they are, mind you, they are going to have children in them because the book's geared for children, but I know you guys can read through the lines. And okay, I cannot find what I'm looking for. I cannot. Okay, here we go. So describe. Here's a great example. The milk spilled. We need a sponge. The jar broke. We need a broom. These pajamas are torn. We need thread. So again, it's describing the problem, and it is even offering a solution, but it's just very describe what you see or describe the problem. And what I like about this is it is actually giving, through describing, you're giving some information as well. Like the milk spilled, we need a sponge. That's assessing the situation and describing what's going on. Giving information. Dirty clothes belong in the laundry basket. One of the examples, or like milk sours when it's unrefrigerated. Slacks are for playing in the garden. Uniforms are for wearing to Boy Scout meetings. Again, crayons are for paper, not walls. The statement in one word. Again, that would have been like when we wanted Daniel to set the table and we said lunch. Or we want Daniel to feed the chickens and we say chickens. So I could just list, like the examples are like close the door. So just say door. Or a chore of having to clean the bathroom. And like I like this too because again, with granting autonomy, and a lot of our participants, we give them a lot of choices. So like asking, whether they want leisure time, or sometimes I know I like to practice like giving my participant that independence and letting them go do their own thing, but there are also things that need to be done. And again, especially when there's like a time sense of urgency. So when it's already, when all the, we met, we went over our to-do list, we went through our binder and our planner, and there are like campus contributions, there are, clean up and support with kitchen. There are these things that we need to get them to do. Just kind of those reminders in one word, and that's it. And like, it saves me a lot of breath, it saves me a lot of energy, and it saves them a lot of headache from like flipping me off in their mind. Describe what you feel. So again, that's just saying like, hey, this makes me feel that way. And what I like about this is this is a great life skill in general. I find myself doing this a lot with living in the community at my own home. Like yesterday, for example, I was studying this and my roommate walks in and I could just feel the way she opened the door. Like I could just hear, she had her music bumping. And I looked up and I said, I'm really focused, and I'm really focused and I need to stay that way. And like, sometimes that can be hard because it can seem, I know a lot of us, again, being sensitive beings, and I'm always like really trying to be careful of other people's feelings, is I don't want to speak my mind because I'm scared that I'm going to hurt somebody. But again, just trusting that like we have to share the facts and we have to share how we feel. And in that we trust that they're not going to have their feelings hurt. So an example, this isn't a good time for me to look at your composition. I'm tense and distracted. After dinner, I'll be able to give it the attention it deserves. One of the moms in here, she talks about how she compares her patience to sizes of fruits. So I have so much patience. I had as much patience as a watermelon now. Well, right now I have as much patience as a grapefruit. A little later, it's about the size of a pea now. And what's cute is, like, a couple days later, her son said, "Mom, what size is your patience now?" So just really, we can be fun and creative too. Like, dude, we're all humans. Sometimes I come in there and I'm PMSing, I'm crampy, like you just got in a fight with your spouse, whatever. You woke up on the wrong side of the bed. You don't even need a reason. You're just grumpy. And share that. Just like explain it. And we can do it in a fun way, right? Like, I feel like I'm going to explode, and just letting the person know. And then what does that do? That encourages them to talk about their feelings too. Like, as a mentor, like, this is the way we healthily communicate. So this is the way we communicate, by constantly saying, like, letting the person know where we're at, so we ultimately, like, trust that they can respond accordingly. And then some of the examples for the notes are super fun. Dear Billy, I haven't been out since this morning. Give me a break. Love, your dog Harry. Dear Susan, the kitchen needs to be put back in order. A mom wrote, please do something about, and she left a list. Books on stove, boots in doorway, jacket on floor, cookie crumbs on the table. Here's an example of somebody writing something that they were upset about. Allison, I'm boiling. My new CD was taken without my permission, and now it's full of scratches and doesn't play anymore. From Mad Dad. So what I really like about that example is he was very expressive of the way he felt. He didn't sugarcoat it. He clearly said he's boiling. But what's great is he said, my new CD was taken out without my permission. He didn't say, you took my CD, which would have instantly been accusatory and blaming. He simply stated the problem and gave the information and shared with what he felt. So I think that is really important for us to keep in mind too, is really try to stick to the facts, stick to what's actually happening rather than blaming the other person. We're doing that. Okay, so your homework for this week, guys, woohoo, is just the same as last week. I'd really like you guys to, and I'm actually going to send you an email that I guess will be coming from Kelsey with some situations, and then just to write your response for those situations. I think within that, there will be a situation that I'd like you guys to choose one method, whether it's describe, give information, say it with a word, talk about your feelings, or write a note, and just using one method, answer like how you'd handle that situation. But most importantly, between now and next week, please guys, like, try this. Like, do one little thing, and it could be at home, it could be working with your participant, it could be working with a mentor, it could be a mana, like, and one method, just have on the forefront of your mind that you're going to implement, and then bring it back to the table and share your experience of what it was like and how the other person responded. I am going to send out that same little homework, so those of you who missed the call last week, that's my biggest instruction, or my gift, is to ask you guys to bring back stories of what you've noticed when you started practicing our acronym of LAG. I want to hear your stories, your questions. They can be bad stories too, like it totally didn't work, and I felt like I was being phony and using a script, and we can just talk about that, because that's where most of the growth is going to come from. So I'm 15 minutes over. Thank you guys for staying with me through that time, and on our Zoom call we'll be able to ask questions and get a little bit more into it. So now we are catching up to speed, like I said, with technical difficulties and Zoom not recording and all this stuff. what we're going to do is watch chapter 1. The link will be sent. This is chapter 2. Watch this. And between now, Monday, and next Monday, I don't know the date. Today's the 11th, so math, the 18th. I hope I'm right. But next Monday, we're going to do 30 minutes of chapter 3 and then discussion. So during that discussion, I want to talk about things, experiences that we had incorporating the information from chapter 1 and then incorporating the information from chapter 2. So you're off the hook easy today. There'll be no Zoom call engagement, but next week, please have that time set up so you can watch this video. The 30-minute video will be sent out. I'll have to talk to Kelsey, but maybe over the weekend. So if you don't have a full hour to commit, you can at least have that half hour to hop on the Zoom call, and the time will be announced. Thank you guys. I'm so excited. I love that you guys are also as excited as me, and I look forward to hearing your stories with how we're making all of this juicy communication, we're making a difference with it. So thank you guys, and have an awesome rest of your day.